Last year in 2024, I found myself doing a lot of videos within the topics of urban legends and wild stories that is attached with extreme music. Now entering 2025, I'll continue that spree and talk about a music project that's impossible to talk about without bringing up all of the stories, the plagiarism, and hoaxes attached with it. That being Velvet Cacoon. Before I get into the discussion of Velvet Cacoon, just know that this project has been documented by a lot of different people throughout the years when it started, from pages on Wikipedia, the Metal Archives, to even a website called Velvet Cacoon Archived, which has basically just documented every little thing that this project has lied about or plagiarized from its inception. Even my friend Dante Dagger did a video all about Velvet Cacoon's hoaxes a while back, which I'll have a link in the description to where you can watch his video. Very well done, and I'll be echoing some of the points that he brought up here. So even though I'm not adding anything new to the conversation of Velvet Cacoon, it's just I've always wanted to do my own personal video on it, mainly because it's fascinated me so much just how deep the rabbit hole goes with this project in terms of lies and hoaxes attached with it, that you really start having a very difficult time figuring out what's even true about it. For those who are unaware, Velvet Cacoon is a black metal band that formed in Portland, Oregon. It's mainly fronted by multi-instrumentalist Joshua Lobb, who goes by the stage name SGL. And well, that's basically as deep of concrete information that we have about Velvet Cacoon that's true. Typically when I do the introduction for bands or artists, I bring up the years when they formed and the years that they were active. Quite surface level stuff. Yet when it comes to Velvet Cacoon, that information, as basic as it is quite scattered. Because on one hand, by Velvet Cacoon, an interview that they did for Full Moon Productions, a label that they would be signed to around 2004, they did an interview stating that they formed in the year 1996. However, their first release, Dextronaut, wouldn't be released to the public until the year 2002, which makes a lot of people skeptical to believe that Velvet Cacoon actually formed in the year 2001. I know I'm jumping to conclusions already this early on, but if you know of Velvet Cacoon and you read upon their history and just the laundry list of lies and hoaxes attached with it, you get to a point where you really need to start questioning everything about them. And as basic as it is for the information of when the years they were active, it is quite significant to Velvet Cacoon with the aura, image, and persona they're trying to convey to their audience. Because they state that they started out in the year 1996 and not the year 2001. And why is that significant? Because 1996 is the year when the whole second wave black metal boom was happening all over Europe, where black metal was really flourishing and blossoming for extreme metal fans. And since Velvet Cacoon wants to look more true to the black metal purists, being formed in the year 1996, they look more authentic, thus they give off more of that true persona that they're really trying to persuade to their audience. However, in the same year of 2004, Velvet Cacoon did an interview for Metal Crypt. And in this interview, they talk about their debut full-length album, Genevieve, which already is wrong considering that they completely ignored their real first album, Dextronaut, and I'm pretty sure there's a reason for that, which I'll talk about later on in this video. Regardless though, they talk about Genevieve, and in this interview they're asked as to why they would form in the year 1996 but remain silent for 8 years before releasing material to the public, as Genevieve came out in the year 2004. And they responded back stating that supposedly, again, since they formed in the year 1996, they didn't want to release Genevieve to the public because they didn't want to do it for street cred, basically, in the black metal scene, and they didn't want to be compared to lowlifes like black metal bands such as Moonblood or Nagaroth. Which, it's like, why would you bring that up in the interview? If anything, I'm immediately now thinking how similar they sound to Moonblood and Nagaroth. So again, it ties really kind of back into that point where I really do feel like they're trying to perceive themselves to the audience that they are authentic being in that year of 1996 when they formed. I know it seems like I'm spending a lot of time on just this one particular aspect, but trust me, layer upon layer you go through at Velvet Cocoon, everything is just so fabricated into this aura that they're trying to create to this audience that something as basic as the years of when they were active is stuff that still needs to be questioned. Regardless, however, getting back on track here and talking about Velvet Cocoon's discography, we're going to discuss their real first album, that being Dextronaut. Released in the year 2002, and originally a download-only album put out by a label called Grimm Productions, which is a non-existent, made-up label by the band to play into the joke of this release. And I do feel like as to why Velvet Cocoon ignores this release when they started doing interviews in 2004 is this was the time when Velvet Cocoon was a joke band. The play on joke with this album is that everything utilizes the word grim. From the made-up label name, Grimm Productions, to the track listing, if you see it all, every single song title features the word grim in some kind of a way featured in the track name to make fun of and poke holes at all the cliches that you would find in black metal with the overusage of the word grim, to even Joshua Loeb's stage name, that being SGL. The original acronym for it was Sir Grimalot. It is worth noting that they would re-release and remaster the album Dextronaut in the year 2006, only now the song titles are changed to a more serious tone with its titles, and the album still runs the exact same, the only difference being that it would include a second track called December Star Embassy, consisting of 3 songs, all roughly around 20 minutes and over, that are all just ambient tracks to give Velvet Cocoon a much more serious tone. Regardless, when you listen to the original Dextronaut that was released in 2002, it's very reminiscent of what you would get from the second wave black metal sound. It's very amateurish and lo-fi in terms of its production value. Songwriting, again, is very bare bones, not much really happening other than, you got the tremolo pick guitars, blast beats, and very scratchy, raspy vocals smeared over everything. That is really just paying homage to what you would come to expect within black metal. So again, Velvet Cocoon has always personally reminded me, regardless of what direction they take, of something really similar to that of Burzum. Fast forward 2 years to 2004, and this is where we get technically Velvet Cocoon's second full-length album, but what Velvet Cocoon considers to be their first serious full-length album, that being Genevieve, or the alternative title, Genevieve December Star Embassy Volume 2. Before I get into all of the plagiarism, hoaxes, and stories attached with the lore of this band from here on out with this album, I do want to state that overall this album is very well done. I know a lot of people just label Velvet Cocoon that it's just a bunch of BS. They all faked everything, why even bother with them? And what always brings me back to them is, yeah, the discussion of all of the hoaxes is interesting and fun to dive into, but the music still is very well crafted. I mean that wholeheartedly. When it comes to how they create their music, of blending very drony, dissonant atmosphere with harsh ambience with black metal, I would state that the quality of this album is up there with the likes of Burzum, early Wolves in the Throne Room, Leviathan, and even Paysage d'Hiver. But as I stated earlier in this video, this is Velvet Cocoon's first serious album. Not only just because the song titles don't have references to the word grim in every single track, but because now the songwriting is a lot more matured, whereas Dextronaut, it was really straightforward and sloppy with its guitar riffs and blast beats that it really didn't have any sense of personality other than it's just black metal. Yet with Genevieve, it's a lot more defined and fleshed out as it puts more attention to detail now on ambience, atmosphere, and textures, that you're really there now to absorb the very minimalistic rawness that you would get in black metal. Even the vocals are changed up a bit as they're more back in the mix to create like another layer of like dark ambience whenever he utters out any of his shrieks, that I feel like for fans of more of the raw ambient side of black metal, this will definitely appeal to you. Outside of the music of this album, this is where lies and plagiarism goes full force. For starters, the album name, Genevieve, December Star Embassy Volume 2. Where's Volume 1 and where are the other volumes? As supposedly this is part of the December Star Embassy trilogy. That's the thing, they never came to light and supposedly they just never existed. Even though there are rumors that there were like fan-made December Star Embassy like dubs that they created for the band that Velvet Cocoon would later on use as legitimate albums, they were later on be discarded as fan-made. Even with the re-release of Dextronaut that would include December Star Embassy, it's not part of the trilogy, it's just 3 long ambient tracks. So it's odd of them to release an album like this and only start off with the second volume of a trilogy. The picture used for this album artwork, the tree in the fog, is a photo from Mark Sink, who was never listed in the credits. And the 17.5-minute closer, Bet Noir, is a slowed down version of Matthias Grasso's song called Soham. During this time in 2004, Velvet Cocoon would start doing interviews. 2 I just referenced earlier would be the interview that they did for Metal Crypt and Full Moon Productions. I have links provided in the description to where you can check them both out. And in those interviews, they're always asked about the layout for Genevieve, which was released in 2004, and it's quite similar to that to the vinyl reissue that they did in 2007. Because in the layout for these albums, you'll come across the word dextromethorphan, which hopefully that shows up a little bit on camera. And this is in reference to the drug that they partake in whenever they're writing songs or performing live. Reading upon that, you would think, so Velvet Cocoon has played live, so there's got to be video footage out there of them performing, showcasing that they are a legit band, that this is real and not fabricated. And when you search up online Velvet Cocoon live, you get a whopping 0 results. What's odd though is reading upon the interviews more when Velvet Cocoon, or really at this point I shouldn't say Velvet Cocoon, when Joshua Lobb talks about some of the live performances that they've done for Velvet Cocoon, is that they always state that they performed in Portland, Oregon in a warehouse, which doesn't really help like sell the story, because if you're just using like a warehouse in Portland, Oregon, that leaves it very anonymous in terms of the venue that you're playing at. Thus, you can just fabricate the story however Joshua Lobb wants to. Yet, when it comes to the conversation in these interviews of Velvet Cocoon performing live in these warehouses in Portland, Oregon, Joshua Lobb always brings up the fact that Velvet Cocoon played with a band called the Werewolves of Venice, a black metal band I've never heard of before. And that's because no one's ever heard of that band. The Werewolves of Venice is a completely made-up band fabricated most likely by Joshua Lobb. Because in that Velvet Cocoon archive page that I talked about earlier where it documented all of the hoaxes, is that the Werewolves of Venice was a made-up black metal band that supposedly has this demo tape out there that only has like 66 copies, yet it's estimated that there's even fewer copies when the hoax was revealed for it to be fake. So the Werewolves of Venice sole purpose for its existence within the spectrum of the lore of Velvet Cocoon is to be this opener band, to make it seem like when Velvet Cocoon announces that they played a show a few years ago, it was with these other bands to make it look authentic, which again, it was just fabricated, most likely like everything else within the Velvet Cocoon history. It's also stated in the Full Moon Productions interview that when it comes to Velvet Cocoon live performances, they'll self-mutilate, drink each other's blood, defecate on each other. Performances go on for over 2 hours. Sometimes people will attack each other in the crowd. Even during one point, a 10-year-old girl dressed in cloak held a torch, and that being the only sense of light that people had when they performed for some reason I don't understand, to even, I believe, Joshua Lobb and one of the promoters got arrested after a show. All just chaos seems like it ensues. And what's odd about that is that during this interview, Joshua Lobb also states that he tried getting a DVD released of one of their shows because he has a friend who's really good at creating menus for DVDs, and that just never came to light. So really reading upon all of this, mind you, this is the Full Moon Productions interview, the label that they're signed to, it kind of just comes off like a creepypasta that's meant to hype up this band, that it's just some of the most, unhinged black metal that exists. And in the Metal Crypt interview, they ask upon one of their previous members, a drummer who goes by the stage name of SKV. How did he pass away? And supposedly by Joshua Lobb is that SKV passed away because he was very drunk one day and fell off a cliff. And they don't think about or mourn his death because SKV was a very hateful, misanthropic person and he wouldn't want that. Which it's like, what? Regardless of what kind of person he was with his overall outlook on life, that was a previous band member, somebody you worked with and clearly got along with if you were willing to make music with him. Why are you just disregarding his life just so carelessly when he lost it so erratically? That doesn't really make sense. And it's really suspicious too that when they talk about this previous member, they go by his stage name, SKV, and not his real name. Believe it or not, I'm nowhere even close to discussing all of the lies attached with Velvet Cocoon, because another one that people typically bring up is with the interview that they did for Chronicles of Chaos in 2005. Joshua Lobb describes that he used an instrument called a diesel harp, something that he made up all of his own, which is a motorized guitar that was amplified and used underwater, and that's how it created the sounds and textures and ambience that you would hear on the album Genevieve, which, not like I need to tell you this, was completely made up and a complete hoax, and there was never a diesel harp used on Genevieve. But still, it's like, what kind of a lie is that? It just keeps getting wilder and wilder the more and more I read into this band. Then there's the rumor that was spread around that Velvet Cocoon was made up of a little over a dozen members, and out of these 15 to 12 members affiliated with Velvet Cocoon, some of them were part of the Earth Liberation Front, which is a eco-terrorist group that fights against the exploitation and destruction of the environment. Taking into account most of what I've talked about in the past handful of minutes, from Velvet Cocoon supposedly being a band that never has any live footage of them playing, to supposedly there's 15 to a dozen people affiliated with it, a part of this, again, eco-terrorist group that's never been confirmed, nor their identity's ever been confirmed, you really start questioning now, is Velvet Cocoon a band or a one-man project? Because Joshua Lobb seems to be the only individual ever talking, even though there are interviews like the Chronicles of Chaos interview that has another member, that being the stage name of LVG. Her real name supposedly is Angela. This makes people start questioning if Angela, the supposed legit second member, is real, because in every band photo with supposedly Angela in it, you can clearly tell that it's a different woman, a different model, making people really question now that Angela is fabricated and Joshua Lobb, again, is the only real legit person that's ever been affiliated with Velvet Cocoon from the get-go. For an added bonus, there's also been rumors that Joshua Lobb was committed into an insane asylum. Obviously, but as you can tell by the track record of this band, more than likely it's a hoax, just like everything else. But getting back on track with the music of Velvet Cocoon, because I know I went on a very big deviation away from that for a while, which is kind of impossible not to. But in 2005, they would release their third full-length album, Northsuite. Musically speaking, this is debatably the most ambient-driven out of all of the Velvet Cocoon releases that have actually been released to the public. I state this because even though this is considered to be a full-length album, according to the band, this is more of like a compilation of 2 unreleased demos that are part of like the 15 plus releases that they've never put out. Regardless, what you get here is just some excellent high quality raw lo-fi ambient black metal, as there's 2 ambient tracks and 6 black metal tracks all together here that I feel like it's just as enticing and just as engaging as really anything you would want in this style of music. Again, for people who are really looking for more of the atmospheric and texturally driven styles of black metal, Velvet Cocoon hits it out of the park, honestly, once again with their songwriting here. The only other thing worth mentioning with this album, unsurprisingly, is that there's a lot of lies attached with it. Most of it, however, being just solely the credits affiliated with this album in terms of who did the album artwork with photography, to who is doing some of the songwriting on this album, and other credits. All are fabricated, all are people that never attributed to this album, and I just find it very odd. Even at this point, Joshua Lobb, who's clearly the only person doing anything with Velvet Cocoon, always makes it seem like Velvet Cocoon is like this collective of people when it's always just him doing everything. Then in 2009, we would get the final full-length album by Velvet Cocoon, titled, and hopefully I say it somewhat correctly, P.A. Opal Power Part 33. This is the most tried and true, stripped down, serious Velvet Cocoon album that you can listen to. It's nothing terrible, but it really doesn't extend its reach like albums prior to it, as it's just really straightforward, mid-pace, lo-fi, raw black metal, and that's really it. The only other thing to point out here that is interesting is this is the only Velvet Cocoon release that legitimately has an additional person playing on it that's not just Joshua Lobb, as there's guest vocals by James Harmon, who is a real individual who was a part of other black metal bands like Snowfall and Blight, who sadly passed away in 2017 from a heroin overdose. But yeah, as it stands, this is the only legit Velvet Cocoon album that actually had another person working on it. Shortly after this album's release, Velvet Cocoon discontinued, their website was taken down, and supposedly the 15 plus demos and releases that they had ready to release to the public never saw the light of day. Although in the same year of 2009, what rose from the ashes of Velvet Cocoon was a new project done by Joshua Lobb that titled Clair Cassis. It would only be a year after, in 2010, where they would release the debut full-length album for Clair Cassis. And what's interesting, as Joshua Lobb describes it in one of the interviews that's thankfully archived by the Velvet Cocoon archive website, is that Clair Cassis is a continuation, or basically the same thing as Velvet Cocoon, only it has a more pop-oriented sound, which you can definitely tell in some aspects, as the production value is definitely more compressed. It's not as harsh or dissonant as Velvet Cocoon, yet it still maintains like the essence and atmosphere and rawness that you would expect from this style of music. It's just the guitar riffs as well are a bit more melodic and have more harmonizing passageways with it that adds to that pop flavor they're going for. Add to the fact too, I gotta give it up to Joshua Lobb here, as he finally found an actual member that doing drums, his name being Dan Marvin, so cool to see that at least he's being truthful on that aspect. As of recently, there hasn't been any new releases or news regarding Joshua Lobb with any of his music projects like Clair Cassis or Velvet Cocoon. However, back in 2021, it was stated that Velvet Cocoon has been reignited and reformed, and the reason being as to why there was such a long period of like a decade of nothing happening with any of Joshua Lobb's music projects is because during that time, believe it or not, he started a perfume fragrance of his new company called Slumber House. But the most recent news that we got with Joshua Lobb is back in 2001, that same archive page I've been talking about, Velvet Cocoon Archive, somehow got in contact with Joshua Lobb to conduct their own interview, which again, I'll have links provided to that website, which basically, you know, as I stated, took every little minute detail you can think of a hoax that Velvet Cacoon did and archived it on that page, which there's too much to cover in just one video, but it's really impressive how they gathered up all that information. But with the latest news on that website, again, they conducted an interview and got in contact with Joshua Lobb. And it's really interesting how they went right to the point with a lot of these questions, asking if he regrets any of this, what he thinks about it, and if he's continuing on any projects. And again, he states that he's continuing Velvet Cacoon, even though it was back in 2021. Here we are now in 2025, and still nothing has happened. And that a lot of it's off to the side, mainly because he's focused with his perfume fragrance with Slumber House. Add to the fact, too, when it comes to all of the music that he released, he doesn't regret any of it, which I totally get, because it's all really great stuff. The albums, the music by Velvet Cacoon, regardless of what you think of all of the hoax, plagiarism, and lies attached with it, the music itself, honestly, is very well done. And I'm glad to see that he at least acknowledges that he's a really good songwriter, and it shows on these albums. But when it comes to the lore and all the stories that he made up, he does agree that he took things a little bit far, but he's impressed by the fact that how much people really dived into the stories, really trying to deconstruct everything that he supposedly did with Velvet Cacoon, that he's just impressed that he has a fan base, regardless if you like him or not personally, to do all of this, which I find quite interesting. And again, it plays into, I don't know, like this performance art almost in a way with the persona of Velvet Cacoon. Because as I stated earlier in this video, yeah, it got people talking. Just like when I talked about Silencer or Stalag, these like stories that are fabricated that you attach with a project, it can't help but make people talk about it, even if it's completely fake. Personally, how I look at Velvet Cacoon with the stories and lore attached with it, is it full of lies and fabricated to all hell? Yeah, 100%, absolutely. The fans have figured it out, even Joshua Lobb has admitted to that. But the end result of it is it got people to talk about Velvet Cacoon. It got people to listen to Velvet Cacoon. Because I'll admit it again, the music of Velvet Cacoon, all of their albums are great. They're worth checking out for people who enjoy lo-fi, raw black metal with a lot of attention to detail with texture, ambience, and atmosphere. This is for you. I enjoyed it. Hell, it's the reason why I bought the album at my local record store about 8 or 9 years ago. Yeah, the music is one thing, but the story got me to notice them. And while, yes, the story is over the top as all hell, as I was kind of like eye-rolling and giggling, talking about all the story and lore attached with it, again, it plays into the mystique of it. So I do feel like people will find some enjoyment with it, because as weird as this sounds, I would argue all of that was like a form of like performance art, but on the internet. Sure, it resembles something of like a creepypasta, but again, it got people talking about it. Because here we are now in 2025, I've been getting comments for a while wondering if I'll ever do a video about Velvet Cacoon. And here I am right now making that video, 15 years after their last release, and people are still talking about it. So something worked there, and they used it to their advantage. And that'll do it for this video, guys. Like always, everything I talked about will be in the link down below in the description. Again, definitely check out the Velvet Cacoon archive webpage if you want all the little details about this project, from all the, you know, lies and fan-made albums that were made that Velvet Cacoon supposedly used. I know there's a lot. It was just way too much to talk about each individual thing in one video, but definitely check that out if you want to know more about it. And again, as I stated, definitely listen to Velvet Cacoon, regardless of what you think of like these just out-of-pocket stories attached with it. It's just really well done black metal. And other than that, like always, guys, make sure you guys drink plenty of water to stay hydrated, and have a great day.